I'm an alcoholic. So who's here at Position of Neutrality for the very first time? Anyone first-time visitors? Okay, first of all, welcome. And second, let me warn you in advance, you're liable to experience us just a little different than other meetings of other fellowships you may have attended. The primary reason that's liable to happen is we intend for you to have a different experience here. What we do here, we've been doing for a lot of years, we take a look at the suggested instruction for a step or so a week, directly out of this book, and we use this book in Crystal Meth Anonymous. Why? The process described by the authors of this book has been proven to work with addicts of the hopeless variety, addicts to alcohol and other substances. So what we do here, although they call it a study so people will kind of have an idea what might happen here, it's really not so much a study as a sharing. I'll show you how I find my experience in the book. I'll encourage you to have your experience with the book, and if we both do our job, we'll share a spiritual experience in this room tonight. How many of you have been here before and can witness for these folks that happens? So for those of you that haven't been told or don't know what they're witnessing to, in 12-step recovery, when we talk about a spiritual experience, we're talking about a sensory experience. You will feel it. So when you do, I'll know and I'll call it to your attention, because we would cheat you to talk to you about the power we call God without giving you a demonstration. And because we're in step 2 tonight, we're going to encounter the power. There's probably going to be some big experiences of the Spirit. That's what should happen here tonight. Fair enough? Yeah. You guys see in this step, what's it say we come to believe in? Power. Come to believe. How does one come to believe in power?
By seeing.
Any of you ever get shocked?
Yeah.
You believed in that fucking power, didn't you? So we're talking about tangible power. And we're going to discover that tangible power tonight, and it is that power that we're going to seek to improve consciousness of, the awareness of being aware in the disciplines. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go to chapter 4, a little chapter called We Agnostics. And they start talking to us about their experience. So it says, in the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. So, did you learn from their experience something of alcoholism?
Yes.
What did you learn about it? Yeah, I've got this abnormal reaction to alcohol that sets me apart. And so, because alcohol doesn't seem to sedate me, it energizes me, I have that abnormal reaction, I tend to overshoot the mark when I ingest it. Anyone else ever had that happen? Okay, so we hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. So the doctor opined that there was one symptom. We may have lots of similarities, but we have one physical symptom in common. We cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving.
Yep.
And that's how he describes that weird effect that alcohol has on my body. And whatever you chased in here, just apply it to the effect you had as a result, okay? And then it says, if when you honestly want to and find you cannot quit entirely, is that true for you?
Yes.
You have some complexity with the stop and stay stop plan. Okay? That's why the entirely qualification is there.
Right.
Okay. All right, so, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take.
Yep.
Is that true for you?
Yep.
Which did you discover first?
The second.
Sean doesn't have all the answers. Sean has all the answers for him. How many of you? I'm just telling the truth. How many of you didn't know that you couldn't stop and stay stopped until you started looking at your loss of control? And how many of you just the opposite? Your loss of control caused you to try and stop, and then you couldn't stop. Anyone else?
Yeah.
So it's either one of those are indications I might want to look at their experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. That's a buzzkill, isn't it? Especially with the mindset some of us come, right? Because we don't know what that looks like. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So to one who feels he's an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. So is there anyone here that feels they're atheist or agnostic? They're in every room, so don't be afraid. Okay. And it says, but to continue as he is means disaster. So have you concluded at least that?
Yeah.
Variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to faith. They're not, are they? Have you ever considered why not, though? Happy, joyous, and free, alcoholic death. Pick one.
Can I get back to you tomorrow?
You don't have a door number 3? Come on, no one relates to this?
Come on.
Okay, so we all can see where it's not easy an easy alternative to face, right? Okay. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. What type? Atheist or agnostic, declared. So you got to get that. Half of them were atheist or agnostic, declared. The others were somewhat religious or very, very religious. Okay? So at first some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. So how many of you came into the rooms, thought, well, I'll just not pick up no matter what, I'll get a new bunch of friends, won't worry about the steps? Anyone know what I'm talking about? But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. Perhaps it's going to be that way with you. See how they know I have no urgency to convince you? You're the only one who knows if your experience is starting to teach you that what you're trying to do on your own isn't working. And no one here is trying to sell it to you. Okay? All right, so then it tells you that cheer up, something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows you need not be disconcerted. So that's where a lot of people get lost. Thinking you're an atheist or agnostic does not block the experience we call God. In fact, the experience will change your mind about the existence of the power. Does that make sense? Okay. So, then it says that our experience shows you need not be disconcerted. So if you're worried about where you're going to find the spiritual experience, these guys are going to tell you precisely where and how, and then they're going to give you some practices and then some disciplines so that you can improve your awareness of being aware of that power in your life.
Yep.
No theologies, pure relationship.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. So what they're saying is they had tried philosophies and codes and found they couldn't live up to them. Have any of you had that experience?
Yeah.
How many of you went to the rooms, they said, well, you know what you got to do is you got to change your playgrounds and your playmates. Did you find you could not shield yourself from yourself? But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral, we could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. So they're talking about a power that will philosophically comfort me. You know the only other power I know for sure does that?
Alcohol.
Alcohol, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin. Depending on, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Our human resources as marshaled by the will were not sufficient. They failed utterly. So lack of power, that was our dilemma. Are we with them?
Yeah.
Okay? We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. They put that in italics. They want me to consider. Why does it have to be a power greater than myself?
Because I can't quit on my own.
How many of you have known it was not safe to have even one? I'm done forever. Perhaps I've overreacted. No one knows what I'm talking about? How many of you came in and you heard people say, you do the same thing expecting a different result? So you stayed long enough, you did the same thing with no expectation of a different result. This goes suck, watch, bring a camera. Any of you had that experience? So lack of power is clearly my dilemma, and it has to be a power greater than me, because the very same me who's not doing it no matter what is somehow, for some feeble excuse, going to do it again. That's my experience. Okay. So obviously, but where and how are we to find this power? Well, we better go to page 55. They're trying to give it away. Go to page 55. The nice thing about this book is it's self-defining. They don't ask a question they don't give you the answer to, and then they'll have you go inward to get your answers from there. Does that make sense? Okay, so second paragraph, actually we were fooling ourselves. Who's we? So not telling you you're fooling yourself, they said we were fooling ourselves. Remember, they're witnessing to their experience. If you're not getting the promises that they lay out for you, you might want to look at what they did. You're unlikely to get the promises they describe if you don't go through the process they went through. So you got to know who the we is, or you won't get what they said. Does it make sense? They already tell you that in the next chapter. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. You notice how they never say paths? Okay. All right. So deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Is anyone in here not man, woman, or child? Or some combination thereof? So everyone in here is part of that class, man, woman, or child? So deep down in everyone, by their experience, is the fundamental idea of God. Now I've heard that misrepresented as come up with your idea of God, but then you've got the created creating the creator. That's not a good idea, because I usually have ideas that don't serve me anyway. But they said, where do your ideas come from? Right here where the main problem is. Where'd they say this idea was found? Deep down inside. So clearly, they're not talking about my idea of God, they're talking about God's idea of me. This is their experience, not their opinion. How many of you have discovered you've been through the process, you've started helping others, and found out what you thought was a wasted life has given you purpose? Yeah. Oh, maybe that idea hidden inside you is a purpose for which you were created. You ever consider that might be so? Let's go on. All right. So that it may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other it's there. So have you ever had a bad idea of the world because of the way you were treated in it? Calamity is just the way I respond to the world, or the way the world seems to respond to me. Pomp, you guys get that? When good things are happening, I did it. When bad things are happening, y'all did it. Got it? And then worships, come on, we're in a recovery room. Tell me that doesn't look like a worship, the things we surrender willingly to get one more. Where's my heroin addicts, my meth addicts? We know that it doesn't have to be taken from me, baby. It's how much can I get for it, right? All right. So then it goes on to tell us I'm sorry. Okay, in some form or other, it's there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves, and the miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. You got to get that they're talking about faith in a power, not faith in a concept. So it's got to be tangible. Do you understand? Okay, we finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. So now they're trying to call my attention to the sensory nature, and no, I'm not saying God is a feeling. What I'm saying is your awareness of a feeling is the power that we call God around here. And if you can improve consciousness, then you'll be able to witness powerfully with emotion without being overcome by emotion, which is part of your purpose. Does that make sense? Okay, so sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. So right behind the idea for which I was created is the power to carry that out. H, capital E. He was there. How many of you really launched, when you got introduced to this power and you found out you could go help people with that experience you had, got out and ran like hell? Where's my friend Brad? He don't ever stop running. How many of you watch Brad run? Yeah. That's power and purpose. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, and then he goes on to say that sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it's only there that it may be found. It was so with us. So even though half of them were atheists or agnostics, they encountered tangible power, and then they started this process of improving consciousness, awareness of being aware of that power. That's the power that's going to take the fourth step. Now that I've met tangible power, I'm going to ask it to help me overcome my fear and look inward. It's starting to make sense. Right. Yes. Should be logical. Bill was an agnostic, famously. He said it's more logical to believe than not to believe based on our experience. He spent a whole chapter explaining that to us. Right. Okay. All right, so in this book, we'll read... Oh, wait a minute. I got to go... No, I got to go back. Sorry. I get so excited.
Yeah, I know.
The fucking coffee, man. All right. So, where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem.
Right.
So, the reason we look at the book the way we look at the book is to get you an idea what the precise instructions are, how to recognize the power, and how to make logical sense out of this manner of living we suggest. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this power, greater than yourself, will solve your problem. Think about what good news that is. How many of you have tried to solve your problem with the mind that created it? Did you find that you sometimes came up with a bigger problem than the original problem you intended to solve? So this power is going to solve our problem if we participate in the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means we've written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral, and it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. So you guys, they always made a good job of separating the idea of fellowship from program. We don't do a very good job of that anymore. People come to the rooms, they think they're in the program because we've told them that. Sitting in the chairs is not being in the program. Notice how they say, here are the chairs we sit in, which are suggested as a program of recovery. No, here are the steps we took. And it's not about beating them with a book, it's about making clear, giving them the best potential for a recovered life. Does it make sense? Okay. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God, for we've reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored.
Right.
How many of you can relate to that?
Yeah.
We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. So for you that are new, whether you're new after 10 years or 10 minutes, if you have not had this encounter, we can't help you unless you share your honest doubt and prejudice. Does it make sense? Your only obligation to yourself is to share your honest doubt and prejudice. When you ask for a demonstration of the power to anyone who's known by that power, you will receive it. It's fact. Okay? To others, the Word God brought up a particular idea of Him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. Have you ever been bothered with that thought, even if you wouldn't have expressed it? So where'd they tell you the power is going to be found?
Deep down inside.
So it's not a power beyond yourself, it's a power within yourself.
Yep.
Starting to make more sense, isn't it?
Yep.
We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. How can a supreme being have anything to do with it all? How many of you were here last week? Anytime there's a question mark, we go inward instead of outward. Insight, not, right? Insight, not eyesight. So how could a supreme being have anything to do with it all?
Be the supreme being.
Who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow?
The supreme being.
The supreme being perhaps could comprehend a supreme being? How many of you have tried to comprehend why the world is the way it is? How many of you can relate to it can't be done, but do it anyway?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yet in other moments we found ourselves thinking when enchanted by starlit night, who then made all this? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
Seen something awe-inspired in nature? It felt almost like an out-of-body experience. You ever had that happen to you?
Yeah.
Because they tell you about it. They said there was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. You got to get that. How many of you have been in a dangerous position in your life? Did you notice how time seemed to slow down? Anybody? When that happened, you experienced your consciousness. Some of you are feeling that. Who's feeling that?
Yeah.
That's the power we call God. It's not coming from up here. It's in you. How about athletics? Any athletes here? Ever made the perfect dive, the perfect throw, the perfect shot, whatever it is you did? Did you notice that the time you did it, you had no thought or effort on your part, you just knew? I'm not saying you weren't prepared before, but I'm saying there's no thought or effort in the perfect one, right?
Right.
When that happened, you experienced your intuitive self. Starting to understand why there's a logical reason to try and improve consciousness? Okay. All right. So it says, yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Did everyone who cares to have such a tangible experience? Consider what we were saying. Did you have one or not? Okay. So we of agnostic temperament have had those thoughts and experiences, and that's because it was fleeting and soon lost. Improving consciousness of it, awareness of being aware in my life, would make sense. Yes? Okay. All right, so let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. So you call the power anything you want. We call the power God around here because of its sensory nature. We would confuse you if we didn't call it one central thing. You understand? Right. But the power's tangible. The expression of the power is in your life. They're going to go into more detail. And all we want you to know is that power is God by their witness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Number one, why don't we need to consider another's conception? Because God's not a conception. God's an experience. And their conception is every bit as inadequate as mine. If I could conceive of God, then it probably wouldn't be nearly as powerful a God as what really must exist, given the nature of things. How many of you have encountered this power in places you didn't think from the teaching you had heard that power went? Like to the depths of your addiction. Anyone ever been amazed that you lived through? Okay. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and effect of contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. So, they began to be possessed of. So, this power flowing through them, but not of them. Do you understand what they're witnessing to? And half of them are atheists or agnostics. They put a condition on there. Did you see the condition? Provided we took other simple steps. What do you imagine those are? Yeah, this is 2, perhaps 3 through 12. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so we found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek Him. The realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It's open, we believe, to all men. Why do they believe that? Because they've shared the Spirit with atheists, agnostics, declared, and with other people falling down on their face in their religion, and people got well. And these people weren't saints or healers, they were drunks. Or drug addicts. How many of you were touched by a drug addict, and all of a sudden you're doing better? That disturbed some people. And I wasn't talking about that kind of touch either. Although, who knows?
Yeah.
Okay. What did I do now? Okay. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. And this applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So if you find a term in the book that disturbs you, either ask someone who might know or look in a dictionary and find a definition of the word that doesn't trouble you. Right? They agreed on every word, but they didn't agree on every definition of every word. That's a false teaching. They had a dictionary and they found a way to agree with the words, and if they didn't, they kicked the word out. Okay? But what we want you to do is don't change the word, change your mind. And if you can't get past it, move on and see what something doesn't come later. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. So at the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. So look at we up here. That's the first 100. So when they say God as we understood Him, notice how they were careful by 2 to say conscious relation. Not a God of my conception, not a God of my understanding. An awareness of being aware of this power. Conscious relation. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right, so then it tells us that afterward we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth, But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere, so we used our own conception, however limited it was. So we start where you are, and the power meets you where you are. If you'll share your honest doubt and prejudice, you will have an encounter with this power. How many of you conceptually got drunk? And how many of you drank it to get drunk? So I can believe all I want that the alcohol is going to change me, but until I ingest it, it's probably not going to change.
Yep.
True? Okay. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question: do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there's a power greater than myself?
Yes.
As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he's on his way. It's been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. If you're sitting there and saying, that's all nonsense, I don't buy it, are you willing to at least admit that cocaine, heroin, alcohol, methamphetamines is a power greater than you? Because we got nothing to talk about if you're not willing to admit that. Because we come to believe in an illness before we come to believe there's a solution. Does it make sense? Okay. All right, so that was great. That was great news for us. We assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. How many of you came to the rooms, or maybe ran to a church, you got prayed over, you did whatever you did, because in our addiction we do lots of things, right? Hoping against hope that what we're experiencing isn't really the end and somebody's going to somehow do something for us. And then you met some kind people, yes? And you wished I had what that man has, but then I didn't do what that man did. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. Why are they so plain to him? Because he's witnessing to his own experience. That's why.
Yep.
And he's not witnessing with his mouth, he's witnessing with his walk. Dr. Bob said, carry this message to other alcoholics and if necessary, talk. Okay. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Have you ever found yourself handicapped by any of those things? I used to hear it a lot in AA rooms. I'm sensitive because I'm alcoholic. You heard that? You're not sensitive because you're alcoholic, but because you're alcoholic, your sensitivity's killing you. But if you improved your consciousness, you would outgrow your sensitivity. It's more logical to believe than not to believe. Does it make sense? Okay. So many of us have been so touchy that even a casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. How many of you were persuaded here by alcohol? Cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin. Much more persuasive forces, aren't they? Okay. All right. So it finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. So your only requirement is to show up reasonable. Okay? And then stay that way, which sometimes takes some more living. Okay, sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one will be prejudiced as long as some of us were. The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. So now they're talking back to us that are still doubters. All that say, that's fine for you guys. Why should I? Anyone in that class? You don't have to raise your hand. I know that's not the kind of shit we want to do. We think there are good reasons. Let's take a look at him. You see what I'm trying to tell you about this guy? He was a famous agnostic. He said, I know you don't believe, but it's more logical to believe than not to believe based on our experience. Let's take a look at the record. Wrote the whole book about it.
Right.
Okay. So the practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. They talking to you?
Yep.
Show me, don't tell me. Give me evidence-based stuff. Right? Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they're firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Why do you believe in electrical theory?
I got the shit shocked out of me.
What Sean is saying in his eloquent way is he has experienced its effects. Right? When I turned on the lights, did I have to announce I was going to turn on the lights, or was that self-evident when I turned on the lights? So we recognize that as the existence of electricity, even though I don't fully understand electrical theory. Because I have experienced its effects.
Right.
Okay. Simply because it's impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. So, everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there's good evidence, but no perfect visual proof, and does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? Have you guys noticed that, particularly in the digital age? It's gotten more so, not less so, huh? Okay. It's constantly being revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt. Are you with them?
Yep.
I understand that at the cellular level, this is a light body, not what I think it is. But I'm comforted by the fact that it looks like a wall and not a light body.
Right.
You with me? Okay. When, however, what they're trying to get at is we already are acting in faith in so many areas, right? Right behind that was the thing to put a thermostat. How many of you go and set the thermostat and then stare at it and wait for the room to get cooler? Or do you act in faith and go sit down knowing the room's going to get cooler?
Right.
Huh. So we already know how to do it based on an experience, yes? Okay, all right. Okay, so when, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, and creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. How many of you can get with them? Laboriously. Yeah, all that shit you say is true, but there's an explanation. I don't have it right now. Let me smoke a little more and I'll have one for you. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. A lot of people don't like that description that Bill wrote, but how many of you have lived a life in addiction or back and it looked just like that? Life means nothing, goes nowhere. Yeah? So it doesn't matter what we claim to believe. What it looks like we believe is this existence that lacks no purpose. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, so they're saying, here we go, the logical approach. Instead of being an intelligent agent, the driving force of God's presence, I choose to regard, agnostics and atheists choose to believe our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of all. Then they say rather vain of us, wasn't it? So we got to take a minute and consider why they think that's vain. How many of you had some help by other humans that you did not interact with prior in your creation? Nobody? I'm the only one that was born of parents that didn't consult me first? So I know nothing of the beginning. True?
Yeah.
I know nothing of the beginning.
Right.
How many of you woke up many times amazed that you were alive? Watched many of your counterparts die in this thing? Don't know why you were spared and they weren't? How many of you wished for your own death and it didn't come? Don't know much about the end either, do we? Don't know the beginning, don't know the end, not really too sure about the middle. That would make that a rather vain thought if I was Alpha and Omega, wouldn't it? Anyone with me? Or am I just boring the shit out of you? Okay. Trying to help you see what they're seeing, because if you don't, your experience is what's important. Their experience is entertaining, but it's not impactful to you. You need yours. That's why I'm showing you, not telling you. Does it make sense? And then when you feel it, I'm pointing your attention to the experience you're having and telling you that's happening in you. And the reason I want you to know is we would teach you to talk to you about the power we call God without a demonstration. That's why we talk about electrical theory and how you've experienced it. Because when you're feeling it, and I know, then did we not demonstrate the oneness that we read at every AA meeting?
Yep.
There is one who has all power. And now that we know it's tangible power, and we got a relevant manner of living, we will improve consciousness, the awareness of being aware of that power in our lives, and go forward from here. Does it make sense? Some of you are feeling that. You're reasoning your way into it. That's good. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So we have traveled this dubious path, beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We've learned that whatever the human frailties of the various faiths may be, these faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness which we should have sought ourselves. So how many of you got prejudiced away from religions because of the way people behaved? But then you've met people that were living stable lives and weren't so bad, and you thought, well, maybe I should have paid attention to something else. How many of you made fun of the rooms when you were out of them, but when you came back, there were some people still doing the thing, stuck their hand out. They weren't the ones making fun and telling you lacked willingness. They were just the ones that shook your hand, said, can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I help you with anything? You know what I'm talking about? Were they not demonstrating some usefulness? And anyone know what I'm talking about? Because a lot of people just replace religion with fellowship. That's fine. But you got to have the experience, right? You got to notice that there are people that are different, are there not?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so then it goes on to tell us that instead we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. So we can relate to that, right? Okay. So we talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. They're getting the first glance. Anytime I notice your intolerance, I don't know whether I'm seeing your intolerance or my intolerance because I'm looking through the lens of my thoughts. Eyesight without insight is spiritual blindness. The process will improve my spiritual sight because I'll have insight and I'll get my eyesight out of the way. Does that make sense? It will as you go through the process, but we're trying to help you understand why, the logical reason why. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. I want to jump to the bottom of that page where it says, here are thousands of men and women. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, worldly indeed, these were intelligent people. They were doctors, they were lawyers, they were clergy, they were business leaders, yes? Worldly. Not a bad thing, simply educated people. Make sense? And half of them were atheists or agnostics. Yet, they flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power and to do certain simple things, there's been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. Now, how many of you could use such a revolution? How many of you have been sober a while and could still use such a revolution?
Yeah.
Okay? Because it's a manner of living, not a workbook exercise. So all of us get fatigued and disturbed, yes? Okay? In the face of collapse and despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. Does that sound conceptual to you? No. Sounds experiential, doesn't it? So they said, lay aside prejudice. Join us. What do you got to lose? This is what the power feels like. Here's what we did to improve our awareness of it. Power, peace, happiness, and a sense of direction flowing in. Anybody want that? Half of them were atheist or agnostic. The other half were religious people dying their alcoholism. And they all came to believe in the same thing. Power. They didn't have the same theology, but they had the same experience of the power, and that power then informed their steps. And they want that. Some of you are feeling that. There must be some people want it. Okay. Okay. This happened wholeheartedly after they met a few simple requirements. What do you imagine those are?
Steps.
They're probably going to work through. The steps are not requirements for you, but the steps have requirements within them for me if I want to grow spiritually. First, I have to honestly want to and be willing to make the effort, right? And then the first requirement is that I be convinced that any life run on self-will could hardly be a success. So I've got to quit judging how I'm thinking and feeling by how I see you act or hear you speak, which means I'm going to have to go out and live in the power so that I can grow into a consciousness that will allow me to be kinder than I feel like being. Any of you ever had the experience of being kinder than you felt like being? Like you're thinking like you, but you're acting like somebody else? Okay. What's that but a power greater than you operating through you? That's what we got you to see. It's more logical to believe than not to believe. Okay. All right. So this happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they are making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. Then they go into a whole bunch of stuff about, well, I don't want to go into that. Let me go to, I'm going to jump over to 53, middle of the page. I haven't done that in a while. So it says, when we became alcoholics. When does one become an alcoholic? Remember when they're saying we here, they're talking about this we here, and they've told us that we is the first 100 who recovered. Well, we'd have to go back and look at page 30 where it says we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholic. That's the first step in recovery. Right? So something happened between that secular experience and this spiritual experience in 30. But if I don't know that I'm alcoholic and I've been restored, does my witness mean anything? They later in the book talk about hard drinkers dry at the moment. See, I'm not an alcoholic in a meaningful way until I'm recovered. That's why a lot of religious people don't get it. So, well, you can't say you're an alcoholic. I'm not witnessing to you as a present condition. I'm witnessing to you of the hopeless condition from which I obviously have been restored. Does it make sense? And I'm not making it up. Crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he's nothing. God either is or he isn't. What's your choice to be? So I'm witnessing to you the power of God is standing before you through me, or I wouldn't be here because they haven't quit serving all the shit I like yet. Got me? No one gets what I'm saying? Okay. So arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. You ever been confronted with the question of faith? What's that feel like? I'm talking about somebody rattling in your face that's pissing you off. When your thoughts are going, man, there must be something to this because I'm feeling different, I'm acting different, but I don't want to believe this shit. Anybody ever had confronted? Okay. Because we confront questions in our mind where the main problem is, folks. Why am I going to need a power greater than me? Because I stay in the storm without it. Anyone ever had a thought storm? We couldn't duck this issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. So if you came to the rooms hoping to get help, and then you heard people talk about steps as opposed to fellowship, and you heard people talking about maybe you might want to get a sponsor to help you go through the steps, and you're thinking maybe I could humble myself to ask for a little help, and you're starting to find that things are happening for you that weren't happening for you prior. That's that bridge of faith that we're walking across. Make sense now? They're very, very flowery in their speech, but it isn't that hard if you just think about what you've been walking through, right? Okay, the outlines and promise of the new land brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. So you remember your first day or days in sobriety, and there's not a cloud on the horizon, and there's never going to be a problem again. But hopefully you got a foundation in the power, and a problem came again, and yet your response was not to go get loaded, it was to turn your thoughts to another you could help. Anyone have that experience? Yep. Okay. All right, so friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we'd been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support. So because we're going to run out of time, I leave you with that. If you've made it to the rooms and things are getting marginally better, even if it didn't work in the past, but you haven't gone through with the process and you hadn't been introduced to tangible power in 2, and you got told it was just a God of your understanding, make that shit up, get you a light bulb or a fucking doorknob or some silly shit that someone said. This is a sensory, tangible experience from within. You will improve your awareness of being aware. You want to take a shot because it's going to require that leap of faith. Does that make sense?
Yep.